Hi, and welcome to Aggressively Average, a series where I, an aggressively average person, attempt to do things. Today we are making a croquembouche. So I'm getting my recipe from Google, because of course I am, and I was going to use this one by Serious Eats because it says it only takes 2 hours 15 minutes and it has some pretty good reviews. But step one is have your choux pastry made. So now I'm going to go and try and find a choux pastry, because I tried to look at the Serious Eats choux pastry and it just looked a bit confusing. So I'm going to use bbcgoodfood.com, their recipe for profiteroles, to make the profiteroles. Already ran into what could be called a bit of an issue. I don't have a scale that works. Oh, I kind of do, but it's like an analog one. We'll try it. And I don't really know what strong white flour is. How is that any different than regular flour? I have plain flour, so we're going to be using plain flour. Preheat the oven to 200 degrees. Let's gather the ingredients. So the scale I have is kind of shitty. It's one of these ones where you just have to like hope that it's not the most accurate. Each one of these tiny lines is 25 grams and I need 50 grams, so we're already gonna fail at the weighing part. I should just get new batteries for my digital scale, but that feels like money that I'm not going to spend. The one thing I do really like about this butter, this is unsalted butter as per the recipe, but it comes with these little lines. So I'm gonna use that 50 gram marker line to at least help me get it somewhat accurate. On 0. Oh look, I think that's pretty bang on. So front on, from what I can see, that looks like 50 grams. This is just not the best scale in the world, because if you look slightly over here or you look slightly over there, it's going to give you a completely different weight. And before you say, you're meant to be standing here, like that moves. So I don't really know how you're supposed to use these. Now I need 75 grams of strong white flour, but as we've established, I don't know what strong white flour is, so we have this plain flour, and again, using the same scale, so we'll see how well that measures 75 grams. From where I'm standing, that looks about right, so I'm just gonna sift this into the bowl and continue on. So into a saucepan, we now add 150 ml of water, along with the butter, along with 2 tablespoons of caster sugar. So I don't have a way to measure 150 mils, but I have these measuring cups which have some on them. So this is 125, tablespoons another 20 mils. So that was like 120, 140, half again, 150-ish. Caster sugar, reduce, reuse, recycle your Tupperware. If you're using plastic, at least reuse it. Of the caster sugar and the butter. Place the pan over a low heat until the butter and the sugar have melted, and then bring to a boil. It always sounds so easy. I'm always like, yeah, I can do this. Can you? Pastry chefs literally spend their lives perfecting profiteroles, but I literally sit here thinking I can do it. Okay, low heat, so let's maybe not have it on max. Was I supposed to melt the butter first? No, until the butter and sugar have melted, then bring to the boil. Alright, well. If the butter was meant to be at room temperature, it is not. It was straight from the fridge. I think the other problem I have with general activities that I approach in life is that I just don't have any patience. Like even now, I'm like, come on, butter melt. It's been, seconds. So the inspiration for this episode was I went to a friend's wedding not that long ago, and the groom had decided to make a croquembouche, and I was just floored with the idea. There was no way he was gonna achieve a croquembouche. It had its flaws, and it was technically cheated because it was held together with white chocolate. Mine's gonna be held together properly with spun sugar. But it did inspire me to do this, because if I was giving him crap and he actually managed to achieve it, then I should be able to do this as well. Okay, so the butter and the sugar have melted. So I'm now gonna put it on a high heat. The ignition went off, so it was just gas. Now I'm gonna put it on a high heat to bring it to a boil. Oh, it's boiling pretty quick. How do you know when it turns from a simmer to a boil? Would you say that's a full-on boil? I think we're about boiling. Take off the heat, add the flour all at once, and beat energetically with a wooden spoon. Okay. You know, I think that's about right. It's all the way from the sides. Yeah, whatever. That's what we've got. If anyone knows how to make profiteroles and knows I've already failed, don't tell me. Well, tell me in the comments because it's already been too late, isn't it? It says let this cool for 5 minutes, which is what I'm going to do. And then I will beat the eggs. So the next stage is to add egg, and it says that it's easier to do in a food processor, but I don't have a food processor, but I do have a hand mixer. So I was thinking of transferring it from the saucepan into like this bowl and just using a hand mixer. I don't know if you're supposed to do that or if I'm about to ruin it with the temperature difference, but we'll find out. But I'm not using a hand mixer on my lovely non-stick pan. That's the lovely non-stick pan. I have 2 eggs lightly beaten in a cup. It says pour them in bit by bit to the mixture until glossy, until stiff and glossy. So. I would say that's stiff and glossy. I'm pretty happy with that. I will say I don't think this is going to make enough profiteroles to make a croquembouche, but maybe we'll have like a teeny tiny croquembouche tower. Because let's be honest, they're probably not going to rise. This says rinse 2 baking trays with cold water, shaking off any excess so they're slightly damp. This helps them to rise. I want to use parchment paper, like brown paper, because my pans are really old and they're definitely going to stick, so I might do both. So I have 2 baking sheets, which I did run under cold water, and then I put paper on top because they're gonna stick. Now I'm just gonna blob them on using spoons. So here are the blobs of profiterole mixes. Look at the teeny tiny one that was working out for the last one. They are, I'm gonna say similar-ish in size. You know what, that one's pretty small. That one probably could have dealt with being married to that one, but they are what they are now. It says to put them in the oven for 18 to 20 minutes. The specificity of that does scare me, but yeah, let's chuck them in and see how we go. The recipe says to leave them in there until they are brown and well risen. Let's see if they rise. If they rise, I will be so impressed. I then have to cut a slit in the bottom of them before cooling them, which I did not know. And that says so that they don't collapse. So I'm gonna get them out in the oven when I think they're ready, put a hole in the bottom of them, and then put them on a cool wire rack. Do I have a cool wire? I have 1 cool wire rack, but it's not gonna be big enough. So some will get a cool wire rack, some will just get a plate. So I have for sure overcooked them and they are way too big, but I've got to say, I thought they'd be worse. So I'm going to put a cut in the bottom of them and then leave them to completely cool down. It says to cool on a wire rack. The problem is this is the only wire rack I have to cool on. It's not going to fit all of them, so the rest are just going to have to get a plate. Hand on heart, if I had not overcooked them, I would be happy with that. I think that's a nice rise. Yeah, they're pretty flat, but for me, like that's decent. It's not as flat as it could have been. They're not as round as they could be. This one's very small. Yeah, they're way too big. They're not really risen. They're overcooked. But I'm quite happy with the process so far. The more I look at them, the worse it gets. I was actually pretty happy with them when they first came out the oven, but they're not that great, are they? Okay, so now my little profiterole things are completely cool, and I've realised I made the profiteroles using the BBC profiterole recipe, thinking it was just choux pastry. It's just choux pastry, but reading croquembouche recipes, they are slightly different. I'm just going to power through because at this point, same, but I would like to acknowledge if there is anyone screaming at the screen that they are different. I do think they might be different, but if they are the same, let me know and then I haven't messed up. Now, I was going to take the easy path and literally just whip up some cream and shove some cream in here because, you know, it's going to taste fine. But apparently we do need a vanilla pastry cream for it to be a proper croquembouche. We're going to make one. The recipe I am now following is the Spruce Eats. I'm going to make half of the cream that this recipe suggests because I don't have that many profiteroles. You know what I find really annoying in recipes? When you have to scroll down to the recipe and scroll back up for the amounts. Okay, gather the ingredients. Like, I'm not going to get 6 bowls out to have to wash 6 bowls. I'm gonna get like 2 tablespoons straight from the container. Does anyone actually line out their ingredients? I nearly just did the egg whites. We want egg yolks. A tablespoon and a half of cornstarch. I have corn flour. That's going to have to do. Is it the same? Oh, I think it's the same. Some kosher salt. Now, I am really sorry to be using imitation vanilla. I don't know what vanilla costs in other countries, but in Australia, it's like $16 for like a pod. So I'm not even sure I'm exaggerating with that. It's really expensive. So imitation vanilla it is. Yes, I'm aware it comes from like beaver's buttholes or pee or something. It's fine. It tastes like vanilla. No one else is eating it but me. So now I've got to place the milk and sugar in a small saucepan and heat over a medium until tiny bubbles form around the edges. Okay. How accurate can cups really be? See, again, those are tiny bubbles, but do I need the tiny bubbles to go all the way around? Or is it okay that the tiny bubbles are just like here and here? I'm going to give it a few more minutes, but I don't want it to boil. Oh, I reckon that's it. I reckon that's it. So it starts to bubble and thicken. Well, it's already really bubbled and thickened. It's pretty bubbly and thicky. I'd say that's pretty bubbly and thick. Okay, oh no, it's gonna scramble, it's gonna scramble, it's gonna scramble. That's scrambled eggs. I'm not doing it again. All right, I made scrambled eggs, but I'm not doing it again. I thought I was filming, but I wasn't. But basically, I made the custard. I don't have any piping bags, so I'm putting them in these little sandwich bags, and then I'm gonna cut the corner off and use it as a piping bag. I saw that on the internet somewhere, and I have done that once before, and it did work, so I'm hoping that works again, but we have to let these cool, so I'm gonna put them in these little sandwich bags, all the custard, and chuck it in the freezer for a while, and hopefully it cools down pretty quick. So whilst my custard cools in the freezer, I'm going to make a cone, because how this recipe works seems to be, and just as a FYI disclaimer, if this turns out terribly and anything I do wrong, it's not the recipe's fault, it's my fault. I am the problem, I'm the aggressively average problem. Anyway, so how this recipe seems to work is you create a cone, you cover it in baking paper, you then use the caramel to stick them all together, and then you remove the cone. Now they do say use like poster paper or like A1 size piece of paper. I don't have any paper. I have this box, which is actually the box for the ring light that I'm using, which isn't turned on. Which is the box for the ring light that I am using, which is now turned on. They do give good instructions on how to like get a circle in the box so you can turn it into a decent cone. It feels like a lot of work, so I'm just kind of gonna wing it. Okay, I think I now have to get the profiteroles and make sure I'm not making the cone bigger than the profiteroles that I have. Okay, so I think about this size is gonna be okay. Like if you think like the profiteroles and stuff, well, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. So we can go with this. I'm just gonna tape it up and then we're gonna cover that in brown paper and then that's gonna be our frame to build the profiteroles on top, and then this should get removed and it should remain standing as a beautiful tower. Let's see what happens. Okay, so my custardy vanilla cream, whatever the hell you want to call it, is very cool now. The freezer really worked, or it took me a really long time to make that cone, or both. So I'm just gonna chop off the end. Again, this is not how they said to do it in the recipe. In the recipe, they don't do it properly. I'm just gonna use that, I was gonna, okay, let's see if I have a piping tip. So I was gonna use these little bags, just pipe it directly into the profiteroles, but the profiteroles are actually very delicate. So I found this. So I'm gonna put it in this and inject it. I feel like some have loads and some have barely any. They are all filled. It is hard to say if they are filled accurate. It's not hard to say if they're filled accurately. They're not filled accurately. I feel like some are gonna have loads of cream, some are gonna have no cream, but I will say that cream is actually delicious. Like it's really, really tasty. Now it's time to make the caramel and assemble. I feel like I've been doing this for hours because I have been doing this for hours. I was gonna do this over 2 days, but apparently they like wilt or something if you leave them. So I just thought I'd power through and get this finished. And I'm regretting that decision as it's very late at night. Apparently for the caramel, all we need to do is put 3 cups of sugar into this pan with half a cup of water, which is terrifying ratios, and then just let it do its thing. So give it a stir first and then just turn it on. This looks like way too much sugar and not enough water. It's bubbling and it's terrifying. Like, any idea how hot that is right now? I'm just hoping it does turn into caramel. I've seen people fail at this on Bake Off, and they're a lot better than me. So this is taking a really long time, and I'm starting to be terrified that this isn't normal and I'm gonna ruin this pan. My caramel currently looks like something out of Ghostbusters, and I'm a bit terrified. Oh, it's happening. We're changing color. We're changing color. I think it's caramelizing. Oh God, it looks like a rice cracker on top. Is that caramelized sugar that I've failed? Okay, I think I have caramel, so I'm gonna turn the heat off. Okay, I think this is caramel. I think what this is here is crystallized sugar. Yeah, see, that's like crystallized sugar. So I'm just gonna take that off. And then I think underneath it's pretty good caramel that we can use. Now we assemble the molten caramel and make a croquembouche. I'm a bit scared because the recipe just says use your hands, but I feel like this is 1,010 degrees, so let's just see what happens. Yeah, I'm using tongs. I'm way too scared to use my hands. I did just burn myself, so I would suggest wearing gloves or just not doing this. So I accidentally made my little mold too tall, so it doesn't quite cover it, but I think the effect will be very similar. The recipe now says to like get some caramel on your fork and do some swirls. So this is my croquembouche as it is at the moment. I've got to let this cool down and then see if by some miracle I can get rid of this mold and see if it stands by itself. Don't do this at home. This was a terrible idea. I've got a burn here. And again, not any of the recipes I've used for. My fault. Aggressively average. Don't forget what we're doing here. This isn't a tutorial. Okay, we're finally here. All I have to do in theory is remove this cone piece and we're done. It's done. This has truly been a tiring experience. I have a blister coming up where I burnt from the caramel work by not following my own advice, knowing that it's molten. So yeah, don't recommend doing this alone, but let's see if I can get this cone out. My chances are 50-50, I think. Okay, and there you have it. Standing on a new plate. It stands on its own. I think it's technically a croquembouche. This is the best attempt I thought I was ever gonna make. And again, don't forget, this isn't a tutorial, this is aggressively average, and this was my first attempt at a croquembouche. What did you think? And if you're sat there thinking, wow, this video was aggressively average, well done, that's literally the point. I'm gonna taste the scraps. You know what? The taste is there, crunch is there. Apparently croquembouche means a little bit of crunch or something like that, a mouthful of crunch. I don't know, Google it, let me know below, but that's crunchy.